testing. But yeah, they removed the extra spawns at 66 and 33, so it's just when he does his commanding roar. Good. Some of these are good changes. I'm glad we're here to beta test stuff. Okay, so moving on to Sisters of the Moon. So this is sort of the first true complicated fight for players. Sisters of the Moon, we're going to go through in a sec here. So Sisters of the Moon is more of a complicated fight. Essentially, there are 3 sisters, right? Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3. You're dealing with almost like a council-style fight. But you're dealing with 1 Huntress at a time. So 1 Huntress is active at a time, the other 2 are inactive. Similar to, if you guys remember Iron Maidens in Blackrock Foundry. Is that right? Blackrock Foundry. Similar style to those. One's active, one's inactive. They get a buff or they don't. Stage 1, the Huntress is active. Stage 2, Captain Moonstrike is active. And Stage 3, Priestess is active. And the other ones are inactive, but they're still using abilities. So you're really only targeting 1 person at a time, minus Phase 2 when they spawn a big owl. There's quite a few things to remember on this fight. The big sort of mechanic that it's centered around is the Font of Elune, which is basically a big moon or a big, basically the big moon changing buffs and debuffs throughout the entire encounter. The longer you're on one side or one color, the more damage you're going to take from that damage type. And when you shift over, then you start taking damage of the other one, but your other one. So let's say the moon damage goes away, the lunar sphere there. So arcane damage or shadow damage. If you're standing in arcane, you're going to take more arcane damage every couple seconds. If you shift to the other side, to shadow, you start taking shadow damage, but then this debuff goes away. And so the goal is to sort of alternate this throughout the entire encounter as you're dealing with all these millions and millions and millions of things. So we'll go through Sisters of the Moon. Again, ground shifts from light to dark here. Let's pull it up here for you guys. So there we go. Oh, baby's unhappy. All right, so there you can see the ground shifting from light to dark and dark to light, and you can see here on the top right there by the Infernals there is a stacking debuff that he's getting. He's at 2 stacks right now, 6% more damage going out throughout the entire thing. He's gonna have 3 stacks now, so more and more damage while you're dealing with so many other abilities. And now you can see people are running out from light to dark, and then it's going to go, it constantly keeps shifting. It keeps rotating through the entire time. Alright. So you can see here, that one goes away, and now light side will start coming out. Everything's really dark, and then the light side one will start coming out as well. Alright, so in terms of different abilities here, so while one of the Huntresses or one of the Sisters are active, they're doing their main abilities here. This is a fairly spread encounter for the most part. Let's go back here for a sec. This is a fairly spread encounter. Again, it's plagued by limited spacing issues, so raids that are larger in size will have more difficulty because of potential space issues. So here they're stacked a little bit, but for the most part you'll be spread due to the glaives and everything else. As you have 30 players in a raid, it'll be more challenging, easier with 10 players in the raid to manage potential space. Alright. So the Phase 1, Huntress is active. You need to run her glaive out, so we're going to go through the different abilities here of the glaive. Here's the Twilight Glaive coming out. Let's pull it up here for a sec. There's Twilight Glaive, and it's going to target, where's that person? Where are you? You can see you're casting Twilight Glaive. Yeah, essentially the person needs to run out. So I'm trying to, there, Twilight Glaive being cast. There. You see a really quick arrow. I'm going to try to pause it here again for you guys. Oops. Try to pause it. Moonglaive. Okay, anyway. You'll want to run this one out. Yeah, I mean, the Twilight Glaive, you want to run it out. It's a big arrow, throws projectiles that go out and back. So if you guys remember the encounter, what is that? The last boss of Black Rook Hold glaive style thing, bounces up to 3 targets. First gets about 75%, and sorry, that's the big arrow. The big arrow one bounces out and back. You don't want to have it go through your raid. So for instance, if we're all stacked by skull here, spread out, or stacked in this section, you don't want to have the glaive pass through the entire raid, so the person is going to have to shift out their Twilight Glaive. The other ability is a Moon Glaive, so here's a Twilight Glaive again, being cast. Just one sec here. There. You can see it bounce the person that's to the left of purple marker, and it's going to bounce all the way back. It is going to pass through melee and pass through other players, so make sure you are spread during this section. There. And then the Moonglaive is the sort of tank swap mechanic. It's going to bounce to 3 targets. The first one gets hit by a negative 75% healing, so the tank, whichever one it bounces off of, will take less healing. That's going to be your tank swap. The other 2 people are random that get hit, and they will not take the absorption one. Actually, they do, sorry, but you'll need to trigger an Astral Purge. So the Astral Purges are essentially the Shadow and Arcane switches. When you're switching between Shadow and Arcane to Shadow is an Astral Purge. All right. All right. The next one here will be the Glaive Storm. There's the Moonglaive again. You're going to run out of rain of arrows. And again, a lot of these abilities repeat throughout the entire encounter here. So here's the Incorporeal Shot. Okay, you see this one is for some of the other phases as well. But basically, with Incorporeal Shot, it is split damage. So again, similar damage to Maidens. This guy is actually going to either immunity it. Well, I guess not. But basically the sisters, you can see them, they're glowing on the left side there. They're the inactive ones. They'll be doing those abilities. With Incorporeal Shot, you do want to split the damage between your players, save your friends. Similar to the Iron Maiden arrow ability. There's also the Rain of Fire arrows, which are coming down. You don't want to be standing in the Rain of Fires. There's Ember Detonation, yeah. Okay, let me go back to the other one here. One sec. Let's go back here. All right, so the next one is Glaive Storm. So this is sort of your wombo combo style ability. What difficulties are being released on Tuesday? Normal and heroic. All right, so here is, hopefully we can see this one a little bit better in one of these videos. All right, so big Glaive Storm. You're going to see it break into more glaives. You'll want to dodge all these glaives. So this is the sort of wombo combo in the later phases. Lots of stuff to dodge as they bounce back and forth. So it's going to split up 3 times. Let's go see it again here in a second. Yeah, Lunar Beacon. So while you're dealing with all these abilities, you'll also be shifting between Arcane and Shadow. Just be very careful when you guys are shifting back and forth. Let me see that ability again. Damn it. All right. There. So there's the glaive ability here coming out again. It starts with 1 big glaive, passes through the room, cuts through people into 3 glaives. Again, cutting through, you can see their HP dropping down, and then into 9 glaives once they bounce each time. So lots of dodging. You're going to do quite a bit of damage on Heroic and Mythic. So again, be careful trying to dodge those. Yeah, he got bopped in that shot. So we'll see with the Incorporeal Shot. So going back to the Incorporeal Shot, the one that you're supposed to split damage between your players, there's a big purple line, right? Not the Drained Soul lines, those. But you can get bopped on it. We'll see what happens, because it is supposed to be physical damage. You may be able to just bop them and leave them. Where's my thing here? But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that side. All right, let's go through the next section here. So same as above, Twilight Glaives, you want to run out through those. The best thing to sort of do with these fights, again, a lot of these are going to be active and active, and you can see there's a million abilities, right? But Incorporeal Shot here is the same in Phase 3 as it is in Phase 1, right? This one, exact same ability. So in Phase 1 and Phase 3, you're dealing with 2 inactive adds. So, where is it here? So in the Huntress phase, you're dealing with her main abilities, right? The Moon Glaives and Twilight Glaives. but you're dealing with these two guys inactives. Here we're dealing with Priestess inactive and the Huntress is inactive. Right, the Glaive Storm, that's the one we're only dealing with, well, in Phase 2 and Phase 3. So a lot of the abilities repeat. It's a little overwhelming at first, but if you know what to do for Glaive Storm, dodge the glaives. If you know what to do for a Twilight Glaive, well, throw a glaive at a target and does 2 million damage and bounces back, right? Hits any players, so again, you want to be moving those people away from the rest of the raid. As much as Glaive bounces between 3 targets. Again, you know what to do for all 3 abilities, right? The Incorporeal Shot, that's another big one. Make sure you split the damage. So now it is shadow damage, so we'll see if we can bop that still. You may be able to immunity it, but otherwise you should be splitting the damage, 27 million, between your players. Twilight Volley, it is a rain of fire from the sky, so similar as before. Let's see if we have a... here's another one here. No, well, you saw the rain of fire in the videos. Lunar Beacon will be the other one, and Shadow Shot just does 1.1 million damage. So the big one here we're going to deal with is Moon Talon. Phase 2 is a bit of the change, so I want to go through the different active phases. Alright. So with Moon Talon, this is sort of your big burn. You may want a hero during the Moon Talon phase, depending on how damage is, how it's tuned. You may want a hero during Moon Talon. So here it's casting the Owl. This is the only time in the fight where you are attacking 2 targets, right? So you have to burn the shit out of Moon Talon because it does an ever-increasing raid-wide AoE. This stupid-ass screech that it does. There's my notes there. Focus Moon Talon burn cooldowns when low HP because of his screech. Similar, you guys remember the Drake on Scenarios, the dragons, where you get it at 50%. They do the regular cone breath. At 50%, they do a raid-wide AoE. Similar style here to the Moon Talon. You need to blow it up as quick as possible while dealing with there. You can see the rain of fire, the arrows coming down, right? Rain of fire arrows we've seen everywhere, right? There, the arrows coming down again. Stay out of that section while you're dealing with beams and everything else. So that's sort of the big one. And yeah, you can see the sisters are jumping around from side to side. They're not stationary in one sort of spot, but the 2 inactive ones there are like a glowing blue. There's a glaive coming out between one person and the other, which is why you want to be spread out on this encounter. And they are constantly, shifting from one side to the other. There we go. The other big ability here is the Twilight Volley. We'll go through this one as well. So here will be the Twilight Volley coming down. Right, that's the rain of... there, the big shadow damage circle. You want to move away from it. Okay, and then we're going to go through the last phase, which is the Priestess and her Lunar Beam ability. Alright, so Lunar, where are you? Alright. Your effective Lunar Beacon. So if you have Lunar Beacon, you'll want to run this one out. And the reason for that is it's supposed to drop a big void zone that silences. There. The slow section right here. So it's basically like the Moonfire, Starfire ability, whatever it is, or Starfall. Anybody in that area will be silenced and be taking constant damage. You can see it coming down on the right side there. Don't stand in bad stuff. Okay, basically... Don't stand in shit on this fight, whether it's glaives, arrows, moonbeams, whatever. That's the whole gist of this fight. Don't stand in the bad stuff. Switch your debuffs accordingly. So Shadow, Arcane, Arcane, Shadow. Once you have enough stacks, just run over to the next section, right? I mean, for the most part on normal, you'll be able to be just fine barely switching because the damage will be fairly minimal. On Heroic, you will need to be actively switching your buffs depending on which damage you're taking. So for instance, if you're having a big shadow arrow on you, the arrow's about to do 1 million shadow damage or 2 million shadow damage, and you have high stacks of the shadow debuff, right? The shadow debuff here, where is it? Right? The Umbra Suffusion. If you have a shit ton of shadow damage, you're about to take a shadow attack, well, maybe it might be prudent to go switch to the Arcane one. So you're taking Arcane damage instead, and when shadow damage comes out, it is very minimal. You take the base amount of damage. So, And yeah, like Zorana says, the biggest thing to realize is they have 3 abilities, a wombo combo ability that they do only inactive, and that ability stays the same throughout the entire phase, and 1 upgrades when they're active. So yeah, when they're active, like they go through the same abilities. When they're active, they sort of buff one of their primary ones. Outside of that, I mean, it is pretty straightforward. It is, again, single target for the most part. There's just going to be a lot of movement and a lot of dodging, both through arrows and, where people are spawning, or standing, rather. So, for instance, as a healer or a ranged, you don't want to be standing in the melee, right? Why? Well, Rain of Fire on you, right? Lunar Beacon, you don't want to be dropping this on your players, right? Marks enemy with a lunar energy, 1.3 million damage every second, and then it silences. You don't want to silence your melee. You don't want to silence the tank, right? So again, drop it off to the side like the other spots there. Anything else for that one? Lunar Fire is a tank debuff. Again, you're swapping at 1 or 2 stacks. There's still Glaive Storm in Phase 3, or the Glaive Storm that goes from 1 glaive to 3 to 9 glaives. You're still dealing with Twilight Glaives, which is, throws it from one to the other. Spectral Glaive, bounces between 3 targets, not a big deal. Incorporeal Shots, well, you know how to deal with that one already, right? Because this is the same one as in Phase 1. Twilight Volley, don't stand in the arrows. Shadow Shot just does, random 1.1 million damage. So the last phase isn't that tough. Last phase is a little bit easier. This was the tank swap. Moonburn is, a pretty heavy dot. But in order to get rid of this dot, you trigger an Astral Purge. So you go from Shadow to Arcane or Arcane to Shadow. Right? You flip your debuffs and the dot is now gone. So a player that takes a lot of damage from Moonburn when you go through logs didn't go through an Astral Purge. Right? So this is important for the last phase for your raiders, that they realize they have to switch targets. I'm sure we'll have raid windows, and I'm sure we'll have debuffs and weak auras to switch, not targets, but switch astral energies, whatever debuffs, right? Lunar Suffusion, Umbra Suffusion. They make sure they trigger an Astral Purge. Switching from one side to the of the moon to the other, clears all stacks of Suffusion and triggers Astral Purge. This is what you want. Trigger Astral Purge for the abilities that request it. All right. Okay, moving on to the next fight.